Hang on a second. Just on YouTube, just look for EGAD-VSB. It's all one word. EGAD-VSB.
Got it.
Yep.
So I see the one from 3 weeks ago that's happening, and I see that this one is upcoming.
Okay, and this one is go to live.
We're there.
There we are. Okay.
Amazing.
Now let's see if there's any sound.
That's great.
Yeah, let's see if there's any sound. Okay.
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you all doing okay with the technology?
Yep. We have 2 laptops, 2 separate streaming platforms. Committee and staff here. Andrew's going to sit in front of it.
Oh, and it's switching to sometimes show this. Is that supposed to do that? Like it's showing, okay,
This has 3 cameras on it.
that makes sense. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't able to tap in with my phone and other people.
Yes. That's what I was planning on doing as well.
Well, you're welcome to do that.
Were you monitoring the chat on the public meeting or on the committee meetings? Okay, I don't think the public can comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great, yeah. We should, like the website and I'll share with the community.
Would you mind if I take pictures during the
Use your judgment.
I'll clear with everyone.
Okay, I'm used to Apple World. How do you delete? Like this deletes forward. Oh, that way. Nope, that's not.
But she said he doesn't know what they want, but they all, I think, you know, what he's done, and welcome to us. He's been interning for the state and creative.
Start off using
Yeah, so if we can put you in touch with him and tell you about it, he's now a young.
Hello, Judge.
With the, with the National Alcohol Beverage Control Association.
Okay, all right, well, it's like down in the basement of the ESO. All right. All right, thanks. Dr. Drake.
Right.
Now, he lives in Williamsburg, but he's gonna
Shift.
live in here. So. They're got some kind of fine. Negotiate.
They were on very
Aspect of
Sally Hutchins.
Yes.
She's on the bar staff.
She says, checking in before you get started, I updated the EGAD homepage on the button. It says watch September 25 live. I just wrote back and said, Andrea Richmond here, I'll monitor the channel.
Excellent. Good. Okay.
So, we're good. Okay. How's your time? Do you want people to talk in the next?
Yeah, I'm going to start off.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah. 6:02. I think we're okay. I think we're ready.
It's a minute or two after 6, so if you want to grab something maybe to drink, because it's not cold down here, or something to eat, go ahead and do it, or feel free to do it while we're listening, and we'll get started in a minute.
I heard about it.
You know, Andrea Dunlap?
Yes, she worked for us for a while.
She's in our firm.
Hello.
David,
She's pretty.
hello. Greetings. Thank you for coming.
It's nice to see you. Hi. I'm David Weber.
Andrew Bridgman. Oh, committeeman.
Yes.
I'm a member of the committee. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, sign in anyway.
Hi. Sign in and
All right. President of the department over in Norfolk.
Oh, good. She's running to talk to attorneys.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, if everybody would have a seat.
Michael Baker, assistant counsel.
Everybody would have a seat.
Hello, hello. Hey, Judge.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm David Newmeyer. I'm chair of the Virginia State Bar Study Committee on legal deserts and the declining number of lawyers taking the Virginia bar. It is titled EGAD Virginia for entrance, growth, and distribution of attorneys in Virginia. And with me is my good friend who is going to introduce herself and talk about the parallel committee that the Access to Justice Commission is running. And we have several staff members here present from the State Bar and from the Supreme Court's Access to Justice Commission. And we have a former bar president, and we have some local residents, and we want to hear from everybody who would like to be heard. We are streaming this live on YouTube right now, so anyone in the world who can find us is able to watch it. And also, Andrew is sitting in front of a sort of private channel that members of the the EGAD Virginia committee members who are distributed around Virginia, so they can watch and also interact with Andrea if they need to be, if they want to pose questions. If you're here just to listen, that's great, but we hope that you're here to tell us some information about your experience in getting access to legal help or helping others getting access to legal help on the Eastern Shore. The committee is going to be holding public hearings throughout the next 2 months, and also looking at a variety of other expert sources about these issues and producing a report over the winter and spring to make recommendations to Virginia State Bar, to the Supreme Court, and possibly to the General Assembly about things that we can do to increase access to legal help in the entire state, not just in isolated parts of it. So that is my introduction, and then we have something I did not bring. Okay, was the list of people who said they would actually actively like to speak. So I'm just going to call everybody in the room, and if you don't want to talk, you can say something.
I want to talk.
Yeah. Okay, Andrea is going to say.
I'm not going to use the microphone. I was a high school cheerleader 50 years ago, and I feel like I can project 4 or 5 rows. My name is Andrea Bridgman. I am the head of a committee of the State Supreme Court Access to Justice Commission. That organization has been in existence 10 or 11 years now. 4 years ago, we were going to embark on a listening tour across the state. And the week before the first meeting was scheduled in Richmond, COVID hit, and it went on hold. We have revived that. Everybody who's here, who's involved with the commission and with the State Bar, is a lawyer or works closely with lawyers. As lawyers, we know what we know, and we probably think we know more than we know, but we don't know what we don't know. And so one of the reasons we're here is truly to listen and not to talk at you. We want to hear about what experiences you, or if you are a lawyer, your clients have had accessing the legal system, legal assistance, and lawyers, difficulties you might have had representing yourself or negotiating the system. But our focus today is truly on civil legal matters, not criminal. We're not set up for criminal. If you haven't signed in, please do. We won't use your contact information for anything other than finding out who is here. As David said, we're live streaming. Feel free to speak. We're going to ask people who speak to come up here because this is the second in a series of these sessions. And one of the comments we got from the first one last month was that people who were listening couldn't see the speaker. They got the back, like a congressional testimony. You know, you can see the back of their head. So this way, you'll see the back of our heads, but we're not that interesting. If you don't want to speak, feel free, there are some note cards out there, which Liz is holding up like in her Vanna White role. There are pens, you can submit comments in writing. We would love it if you would turn off or silence your cell phones, help yourselves to whatever you want in terms of refreshments now or during the meeting. Also, you can see the fire exit is right here. It's pretty easy to get to. If you need a restroom at some point, there are 2 half flights up, and those are both on the top floor.
Men's room is on this level, and a ladies' room is 1 floor up.
You can understand why I didn't know that. Okay, thank you very much.
Good, thank you. And we do ask when you sign in on our pad over here, so we know who you are. Well, also leave us either a phone number or an email address. So if we have follow-up questions for you, we know where we can find you as well.
David, we also have the survey links.
Oh, thank you.
And that's a way that, as a legal professional, as someone who serves the public, or as just a local resident, you can provide feedback to the bar about your experiences with accessing legal help, letting us know, if you're a legal professional, why you decided to practice where you are. So that's a great way, if you don't feel comfortable speaking today, to give us your insight.
Okay. And Chris Gantz is the staff director for this effort and also the Access to Justice director for the Virginia State Bar. And Liz, would you just share your title with the Access to Justice Commission?
Sure, I'm the staff director with the Access to Justice Commission based out of the Supreme Court.
And let me mention also, I believe that we have not what I would call an order of go, but if you did sign up, we're going to listen to people who signed up first and non-lawyers before lawyers. So.
Yes, okay. And if we had that list, we could call it out by name, but I did not print it out. So we will just take your word. If you did sign up and would like to speak with us, we'll go ask any such people to go ahead first. Who would like to be first? We don't bite. Okay, Tricia, I'm going to call on you if nobody else. Okay, Tricia, you're up.
Sure. We'll wing it a little bit, so I apologize.
Okay, thank you. Have a seat up here. I use the microphone to make sure everybody can hear. So if you don't want to use the microphone, I think we probably have a small enough room, but it's up to you.
If you can't hear me, let me know. I generally can talk pretty loud. My name is Tricia Batson. I am an attorney at the Legal Aid Society of Eastern Virginia. I also run the pro bono department at Legal Aid. And our legal aid program serves the south side of the peninsula and the Eastern Shore. So we have a very large service area. If you're not familiar, we have an office here in Belhaven with an attorney and a legal assistant. So we shut down there for a while during COVID, and it took us a little while to kind of get back up, but they are open a little more to the public now. So that is good. In my role from a pro bono standpoint, we get cases in all the time that we just can't handle through our in-house staff. And we have one attorney here, so that makes it a little bit harder. Some from our Norfolk office come over from time to time to help out. But I also look to attorneys to handle other cases. We do a lot of uncontested divorces and guardianships. I invariably get calls about people with probate and property issues. I am always looking for attorneys. I haven't been over here very much, so I haven't met face to face, which I think is the best way to meet people, and to get pro bono attorneys, but I have made calls. I guess don't know who to call for things is part of it. So struggle. So I end up relying on people from Virginia Beach to come over. Those that aren't familiar with our program, also I should back up a little bit. To be a client of the Legal Aid Society of Eastern Virginia, you have to be within 125% of the poverty limit. I don't know. Do you know the numbers off your top of your head for a family of?
It's for one is like 18,000.
Yeah. So before anything would ever come, that is our client base. And they generally do not have money for an attorney. We screen things pretty closely because we don't, that's not our goal, is to take away from paying clients. But at the same time, I'd love to bridge opportunities. I struggle to find people to help our clients over here that want a divorce for many reasons. Sometimes the domestic violence, it's just a struggle sometimes to get those.
Okay, two questions. First off,
Yes.
can everyone hear her well?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's good, all right. I'm gonna move our camera a little bit forward, because we got you from the side. This is a meeting owl that is streaming on our YouTube channel. It has multiple cameras, multiple microphones, and it's a great device. So, good, thank you, Tricia. All right,
Any questions?
questions? Tricia, does your program measure in any way the number of eligible clients that you turn away for service on the Eastern Shore?
Yes. We do keep track of that. We try to give people counsel and advice, even if we can't help them, but there are a lot we can't. I see it more of how long they're waiting for me for assistance with an uncontested divorce. And
How long is that?
I have some right now that are back to December. I'm trying to funnel those through, but we do have quite a few of those right now. And so I have people waiting almost a year to even get to an attorney. And those in different localities make it harder to find somebody. I also have trouble I have a lot of clients that have incarcerated spouses. So now I'm looking for an attorney and a guardian ad litem that will come to the Eastern Shore or practice out in the Eastern Shore. So that's another struggle that we get, and there are those as well.
Every legal aid program has priorities for the types of intake that it does. If you accept federal funding, as my program does, then you are required to set priorities periodically. And sometimes by choosing priorities, or you're choosing not to serve certain types of cases. In your program, do the priorities basically eliminate or just reduce to advice only types of cases you think are in high demand or important enough that you would be serving them if there were more lawyers available?
So our biggest priority right now, and jump in, Susan, if I misstate something, are housing. Everybody is aware of the housing issues, affordable housing. Some of the other areas in the Hampton Roads are have the top evictions rates in the country. So that is a priority. And that I think is the largest. It is more than 50% of our cases. We do a lot with family law with really a target on domestic violence. Domestic violence victims, we frequently do not, if we get into a custody or divorce matter, we wait until there's another attorney on the other side for most of them. So it kind of levels the balancing field. Then we also do some consumer. We have, because we are short-staffed at this moment, we do end up counsel and advising a lot of them. Anybody that comes to us, for example, with a custody matter that doesn't have an attorney on the other side usually does just get counsel and advice. But we've had to do a lot of counsel and advice lately, even when there is another attorney, just from the standpoint of not having the capabilities to handle it all.
I have another question for you, and I saw a hand up, so I'll get to that next. On the Eastern Shore, how many attorneys do pro bono volunteer service for your program?
How many attorneys are there?
How many attorneys do pro bono work for your program?
I don't know of any at this point. So if anybody would like to, I'm happy to take some business cards or pass out mine. I don't know of any at this point. I had one that was doing, she was retired doing the emeritus program, and we were just struggling to get the right things to her. So I've had interest at that point. But
Tricia, to what extent do you think remote service would help?
I think that would allow me to do Eastern Shore cases.
Let's define what remote service would mean.
The attorney and the client are not in the same place.
Well, from that
It
standpoint,
is
you
like
know,
Zoom.
so I do a fair amount of the divorces that I have gone through my program on the Eastern Shore. The uncontested divorces have been with attorneys in other localities. We try to get them so they're fully uncontested and a court appearance might not be needed. But there are times where they are, and obviously incarcerated spouses add another level to that.
David, can I just make a comment?
Go ahead, Chris, please.
So I think that I always start from the place of all attorneys think of themselves as someone who would like to do pro bono.
Right.
It would be wonderful to give back to the community and use your law degree in that way, but there's some barrier that they're facing. So if anyone is in the audience today that is a legal professional that has struggled with those barriers, I think it would be helpful for me to hear about that, and for people like Tricia who are running pro bono programs to hear about that, because it's our job to figure out how to get over those barriers to make it easier for attorneys to engage or to find alternatives that are going to meet the need. So I just wanted to point that out because I think it's a great opportunity for us to hear from the professionals about, you know, what they're experiencing, knowing that they have good intentions, but it's not always easy to do.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from the audience. Kevin?
What is the blend of funding sources for legal aid? And do you have anybody in a dedicated fundraising role, such as a director of development or something like an SPCA might have, or some other charitable organization?
So our fundings are grant related. I don't know the percentages. We get federal legal services corporation funds, just like David's program. We also get the state LSC, VA funds. We do actually have a director of development that's just been in the role the last year or two. Holly Yates is our new director of development, and she's actually done a lot of great work. She kind of started with grants and was able to get us a lot of very specialty grants. So we have grants. We have a grant that works with homeless veterans. We have a grant working with youth that are, I think it goes 15 to 25 that are facing homeless. We have a lot of homeless targeted grants. So she has been able to bring in a lot of those grants, and she is now stepping up the actual more fundraising and development.
Virginia has 9 different legal aid programs. Every one of them has its own approach to development, how many staff they're doing, that kind of thing. My program has a $5 million budget. We're based in Lynchburg and serve Southside Virginia. And I would say about 40% of our budget comes from Legal Services Corporation of Virginia, which is a mixture of funds from the General Assembly, also interest in lawyers' trust accounts and filing fee money. And probably 20 to 30% comes from the Federal Legal Services Corporation. And then we raise all the rest from local governments, United Ways, private donors, a mixture.
Thank you.
Tricia, thank you very much. Ma'am?
Yes, I think I heard you say that you also wanted to hear from the general public.
Yes, we absolutely do.
Okay.
Would you please
I'm
come up here?
kind of thinking of the last time.
Let's see, if you would be willing, even just to come to the foot of the stage, if you don't want to be up on the stage, because that way that the people who are online and watching and listening, I think will be able to hear you more quickly.
Well, I'm thinking I'm at the wrong meeting, but I'm basically here because this question, have you faced a legal problem?
Yeah, no,
Yes,
you
that-
are at the
you-
right meeting. You are,
Oh, you were.
you are the reason we're here.
Good, and would you like a chair, or do you want to stand?
No, I think I understand.
Okay.
Okay, this is, I'm from Accomack County. I've lived on the Eastern Shore since 2007. And I've had several issues with my employer, the Accomack County Public Schools, with my HOA, Captain's Cove, and what was the other thing I have another issue going on. I've been trying to find lawyers who would represent me on these, very hesitant. Okay, I guess, I don't know why. I think it may be an issue that I am fighting against systems. I just want them to do what they say they're gonna do, you know? And so I represented myself because I couldn't find a lawyer. And then I had this wonderful experience in the courtroom where the judges wouldn't listen to me. They listened to the lawyers on the other side, but they didn't listen to me. And in one situation, it actually occurred, I was trying to bring the judge's name in. He's not a regular judge. And nothing, you know, this has nothing to do with River Lewis, who I think is a wonderful judge. And, was, you know, because he's no longer with us. But in one situation, the judge constantly interrupted me. I could not finish one sentence. And I actually said to him, "Sir, could I please finish couldn't get to the sentence part because he had already interrupted me." So I'm probably I'm concerned about the lack of a representation. I can't find a lawyer who's willing to take my cases. And I don't think it's the case itself. I think it's the defendant, because it's always a system. And the second thing is that I can't represent myself in front of the court. This is an unusual experience for me. I tend to be the kind of person that if there's, you know, if it's been some kind of wrongdoing, I will go to court. I've done that in Prince William County, and I've been successful. But here, you know, it's like I'm a non-entity, and the judge does not want to hear what I have to say. While he is, and I can give you the name of the judge eventually, while he is paying a great deal of attention to the opposing lawyer. That's really all I wanted to bring up. But I think the court system is broken in some way.
Ma'am, I understand that you face these challenges in the court. How was your experience in terms of the filings?
Well, most of it was in district court, so it was relatively easy. The filing is not difficult. The getting heard is a.
Understood.
Yeah.
Well.
So anyway, so I wanted to bring that up. I felt it was important.
Thank you very much.
Were you able to even get legal consultations where you got advice and counsel about the merits of your case or the rights and options that you had?
Yeah, but legal consultation in the sense that the persons did not have the time to take on a case of that nature.
Okay.
But not in terms of that this was an impossible case. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know. I have some more things coming up. I really need a lawyer.
Okay, we have another question if you would.
It's not a question.
Okay.
I want
Okay, David, go ahead.
to, I'm sorry, you can. Thank you. I am going to speak later. I just wanted to correct something that was said because I know a lot of people here. There are at least 2 judges in the room. There's a Commonwealth's attorney in the room. There is at least 1 assistant Commonwealth attorney in the room. And with all due respect to one of the things that was said, there are people here who do want to talk about criminal issues that are unique to the Eastern Shore. And I want to make sure that they can speak on that. We are not like the rest of the Commonwealth. You have a district judge, you have a general, you have a juvenile domestic relations judge in here, you have the sitting Commonwealth attorney, and you have an assistant Commonwealth attorney, and they want to speak, and I just wanted to correct it. I am a member of the special committee, of the EGAD committee, so I want to absolutely make it clear that we do want to hear about criminal things. I am a member of the committee that is part of what this public hearing is about. I will testify later, but I just wanted to make sure that people could be heard.
Thank you, David.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good entree.
Okay. Who would like to be next? You're being singled out by David, so you better go ahead.
Well, my name is Jack Thornton. Most of you know who I am. Those of you who don't, I am the Commonwealth's attorney in Northampton County, just just south of the border there. I mean, I wasn't always, I started prosecuting in 2018. Before that, I was just a general practitioner, did civil work, did some criminal work and criminal defense work, and all that sort of thing. But it's weird. I will say, and there's a lot of need in Northampton and Accomack County for, I will say, both civil matters and for criminal matters. And I'll start with the civil matters. I'll tell you, I have people call my office, talk to me, because they have an issue that is truly civil, and they can't figure out they can't get anybody to represent them or take up their case, whether and obviously as the Commonwealth's attorney, I can't give legal advice, forbidden by statute. But I'll tell them, I'll say, look, I think this is a civil matter, it's not a criminal matter, and it's funny because a lot of them will say, well, aren't you the Commonwealth's attorney? Don't you work for the government, and therefore don't you work for me? And I'm like, well, no, it doesn't really work like that. But and I'll say, well, yeah, I think you need to contact a civil attorney, try to get a free consultation or something along those lines. And most of the time, people they understand or what have you, but every now and again they get angry. And because I guess just because they don't know what else to do or what have you. And, the law oftentimes doesn't, it is the way it is for a reason, but oftentimes to a layperson, it doesn't seem like it's being fair or it's doing the right thing. But there's these procedures that we have. And I have no doubt that the young lady who spoke before me has some serious issues that she needs help with. And I have seen, while I'm sitting in court, many pro se litigants, be they criminal or civil, get frustrated because technically, only lawyers are allowed to argue before the court, and all of the procedural things, and that's why, again, that's why lawyers get paid, because we know how to do all of that stuff. But unfortunately, there is not a lot of lawyers here to begin with. I will say that most of I'm trying to think how many attorneys there are that are not prosecutors that are under the age of 50 here. All the prosecutors, me, my assistant, and then the 3 Commonwealth attorneys, or the CA and his 2 assistants in the Accomack County. Those are 5. We're all under 50. But other than that, there's 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 or 4. I don't know about you.
Just keep it that way.
But it's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot, and you have a situation here on the Eastern Shore. One of the poorest areas in the Commonwealth, and so there's not a whole lot of the attorneys here aren't making usually a whole lot of money, and it's they have issues just like everybody else does with keeping their lights on and and all that sort of thing. So it really is hard for a lot of the sole practitioners. But pretty much all we have here. We have a couple small firms, but pretty much sole practitioners. It's hard to keep those lights on and to keep things going. Not only that, but in the criminal sense, we have, and maybe the judge, I don't know, the judges can talk more about this if they want, but there is a very big lack of people on the significant lack of attorneys on the court-appointed list. We don't have a public defender. I don't think this area could support a public defender's office, but there's not a whole lot of attorneys that are on the court-appointed list. And I will say, and I've seen this, and it's troubling. And I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that all the lawyers are created equal. I mean, we are, well, some lawyers are better than others, but some of the lawyers who practice over here, and they do it out of the goodness of their heart. They might live across the bay in Virginia Beach or something along those lines, and they practice over here, and they're just stretched so thin that oftentimes they might not be able to see their client until the day of court, or something along those lines. And what might be to you and me a small matter of trespass, and somebody else's, point of view, it's a class 1 misdemeanor, I'm gonna lose my job, and, all that sort of thing. So there's a disparity. We have some attorneys who are great, who are always on point, hold my feet to the fire, which irritates me, but it's what they're supposed to do. And then we have others who are just stretched so thin between various jurisdictions trying to serve the needs of all of these people. And it's kind of a crapshoot, when you go into get your attorney appointment, who you're going to get. Is it the guy that is there and, he doesn't do all, he's able to not do all these other jurisdictions, focus and give you good legal support, or is it somebody who's all over the place, and trying their best, tries to give good advice and all that, but just doesn't have the time and resources. So that's one of the big issues with the criminal side. I am the unfortunately still the bar president over here. So I got tricked by now Judge Burge into doing that, and so far, I got tricked and nobody's willing to take it from me. So I've done that for about 5 or 6 years now.
So Jack, how, the Bar Association is for Northampton only, or is
Northampton and Accomack, it's the Eastern Shore Bar Association.
And more or less, what is the membership of the association?
Judge was actually asking me that.
There were 47 emails.
47 emails, but
But
that's.
of that includes the county attorneys, the Commonwealth attorneys,
Okay.
the judges, the assistant Commonwealth attorneys. By my guesstimation, this is David Weber speaking.
Right.
For people online, I think there are under 20 who are private practitioners.
That would be about right.
Between both counties.
And
And 2 of us are married. Well, actually,
To each
a couple
other?
of us are married. Actually, I think two different couples, 3 different couples are married. 6. Rusty and, there's 3 different couples who are married.
And and of that, I mean, some of them are, some of the attorneys are kind of winding down, looking to retire and, all that sort of thing as well. So.
I mean, the next logical question is, what, in your view, could be done to attract more attorneys?
I don't know. If I knew that.
That might be.
Right.
That the bar or the Access to Justice Commission might be able to
Right.
promote. Obviously, we can't change the economy of the region.
No. I mean, people who, I will tell you, I mean, my assistant, Denny Delala, he was from Virginia Beach, and he came over because he loves the area. And that happens, that seems to be what the draw is, but, unfortunately, a lot of, especially young guys coming out of, or young guys and gals coming out of law school, they don't, they want to make money, and they need to make money because they got all this debt and all of that. And so, I mean, I will tell you, just as, I mean, I've had an open position and as an assistant Commonwealth attorney, and it's a paying gig. It's a government job, and you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and it's sat open for about two years until finally about a month ago somebody contacted me. And I know that Accomack is having the same issues all over the Commonwealth as far as prosecutors go.
We've been open for longer.
Yeah, but more people like Northampton.
How was that job in terms of, like hiring new grads? Was it entry level? Were you open to entry level?
Oh, yeah.
Is that law school?
Yeah.
Okay, open to people like bar studying, things like that?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I actually put the, I don't know what Accomack has done, but I have actually put the job opening on some law school websites, Regent, I think Richmond, Liberty, Navy, I forget all the ones, but, yeah.
Is your question for Jack?
Chris, go ahead.
Is this an area where you feel like there are retired lawyers that aren't actively practicing, that if incentivized could help fill some of the gaps?
I think that some of the retired lawyers, it's funny because people will retire and come here and thinking that they're gonna wind down. A lot of our more active attorneys are the ones that retired here from Northern Virginia or what have you. One of them comes to mind, lives up in Chincoteague. And, she told me, she says, yeah, I came here trying to recover, trying to kind of wind down, and I'm busier now than I ever was. And so I think that without that, we would be in real trouble, because we are having, some of these the older attorneys that are retiring to this place and, helping us out. And we're just not, I think we have one new young law school graduate up in Accomack. That's the first one I've heard of in a long time.
Anita's son.
Yeah. So.
Jack, what do you, in your experience, what's the impact on the community when there are not enough attorneys available to meet your general needs?
Well, I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, if somebody needs help, they need help and they'll get frustrated. Then they'll try to, help themselves or what have you. And then they get frustrated when, and maybe the young lady was talking about, she goes in and trying to prove her case, and the lawyer knows the procedures and the rules and the ins and outs and able to basically just shut her down, and that's frustrating. I guarantee.
But I do want to say something about that, and maybe the rules are different here on the Eastern Shore, but I have represented myself in Prince William County several times, and I have not had the experience that I recounted today. Okay, and actually I won my cases.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not, right, I don't know the rules and procedures, but I can state my case if the judge will let me talk.
And that just comes down to interpretation of rules and what the judge is going to allow and all that sort of thing. But
Okay, so my question is this: in terms of the court systems here, are people not allowed to represent themselves?
They certainly are, but I don't want to get into a big discussion.
No, I don't want a big discussion. I just wanted to know.
Yeah, I mean, no, they certainly are. I mean, that's absolutely right.
Okay, especially in light of the fact that there are so few attorneys.
Good point. Jack, thank you very much.
Anything else?
I didn't
Okay.
sign up though, so.
Please, not required. Is there anybody else who signed up? Okay, let's take you, sir.
Judge, come on up.
We're gonna honor your signing
I
up.
have dueling judge.
I know, we agree, we can tag team.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Judge Vincent.
Well, I'm Gordon Vincent, and I'm a judge of the General District Court. And I wanted to address the court-appointed list, despite the fact that it's criminal, because being on the court-appointed list for most attorneys, or many young attorneys, anyone who might move and start a law practice here, being on the court-appointed list is pretty essential, and it's also a good way to generate income. We have 6 lawyers on the court-appointed list in Northampton County and 8 in Accomack County. Just a few years ago, we had 12, and 5 of them were younger lawyers from the other side of the bay who worked in law firms over there, who tried to serve a lot of jurisdictions and found that they had to focus their practice, and they're young lawyers and they were growing their practice, and they have left our court-appointed list. Another one retired, was a lawyer from here who retired. At least 2 of the lawyers in Northampton of the 6 live across the bay and come over here to take cases. One of them has a home elsewhere, and he is transitioning to spend more time in Cape Charles. He is on our court-appointed list, a very experienced lawyer, and we're very glad to have him. He wants to move here, and he's sort of bringing his wife along as best he can from the Richmond area. In Accomack County, some of the same people are on the court-appointed list, and the near retired lawyer from Chincoteague who's in court just about every day. Is in that category. She came here because she wanted to live here and found herself easily able to get busy. The service on the court-appointed list, which I did many years ago as a young lawyer, is a way to generate income as you build a law practice in doing other things. So where do the lawyers come from who will take child custody cases, business disputes, divorces, boundary line disputes, the general civil practice? Where do they come from? They come from here because they have a base of clients and experience. They get to go into court and get experience on their feet. So that's just not a solution, but I'm just pointing out where things are. The other thing I can tell you is that when I came back to the shore in 1989, there were approximately 40 lawyers, 42, 43, I don't remember exactly, on our bar list or that we knew of. The 47 that he brought up includes some retired judges who are not eligible to go out and take clients as lawyers are. So there were about 40 then, about 40 now, and the population is relatively stable here. So one difference is then we had 2 judges and 2 Commonwealth attorneys. Now we have 4 judges, 6 Commonwealth attorneys plus an opening, I guess, and 2 full-time county attorneys who were included in the list. Back in the day, lawyers in private practice were the county attorneys on the side, and that was just a client of theirs. So a lot of lawyers are not in private practice any longer because there are more government positions. The other I guess, factor for the near-term or fairly near-term future here is that our judges range in age from 62 to 71. And so there will be a transition over the next several years, and that will take 4 lawyers out of the law practice world, whether it's prosecutors or private attorneys. That will take people off the roster and become ineligible to serve clients. So those are a couple of symptoms. I could tell you why I was attracted to be here. I'm a native and I came back at age 32, but there's some difficulty for spouses to find meaningful work. Housing is probably an issue. People can find a place to live if they're ready to pay for it, but that's probably not the biggest issue. Spouse employment is probably the biggest issue, and people from the city don't dream about living here, I guess, until they get much older, and then they start having better dreams. But the young people coming out of school, it's kind of a hard sell. So those are, I don't know the entire solution to this problem, but I know it exists not just with lawyers, but also with doctors. My dentist lives in Virginia Beach. I've been trying to talk her into moving over here, but her husband is Virginia Beach employed, and it may not happen. I hope she stays. And it's also a problem in other rural areas, I know from talking to other judges. So
Sounds like increasing the birth rate is difficult here if most of the people coming here are already retired.
Yes, it is.
So,
Yes.
Judge Burge.
Sheila Burge, I am the JADR court judge for District 2A. There is one judge in that district, me, okay? I've had so many thoughts about this. I did take the survey, by the way. That's what got me started thinking about this.
Thank you.
And, I wanted to touch on 3 or 4 topics, if I may. One is, as Judge Vincent talked about, we have in our court mostly pro se litigants, although that has been changing a little bit with some of the really thornier cases that we've had, particularly related to child pornography and sex cases and serious domestic violence, which, are all we're trying to find court-appointed people. Judge Vincent hit the nail on the head on who we have. We have even fewer people who are willing to be in the JNDR court. to take cases. We are begging people all the time. And those of you who are here who know, like, he's a workhorse. Isabel, that he mentioned earlier, a workhorse in that court. For those civil related cases, custody and visitation and things like that, by and large, what we're having to do, Susan and I talked about this today after a case while we were waiting, was if we have an incarcerated parent or something like that, we are struggling for a GAL. Many folks are coming into our system that are just self-representing, doing the best they can do, and it's a mess. It's a mess to our dockets because I do want to listen, and it takes a lot longer on a case to do that, way longer. So I do my best to do that. The other thing I was thinking about, like, well, what else can we do that helps people to want to practice here and be in our courts? One is I've done everything I can to have remote or WebEx and let an attorney or a person be on WebEx with us anywhere. And I will do those cases, whether I'm in Accomack or Northampton, to try to make the faster time turnaround. But it's still hard. And there's still not that opportunity of face-to-face. So that's been a problem for us. And sometimes the connections aren't so great. Okay, internet connections. We have places on the shore where service is really limited. And during COVID, when we started doing this, we did more of it, but people were out in their yards, at a place where they could get a good signal trying to do a video, right? So that's not a good solution, but something like that. So a couple of thoughts I had. One, beyond, we do have some attorneys from across the Bay. I would welcome more attorneys from across the Bay, Kevin, and others, okay, who might be able to work remotely within our court system to do the criminal work, for example, get on our court-appointed list. I was thinking about what else could we do. I did a little bit of research, and my husband John did a little bit of research. He's a retired guy who won't do anything, okay, anything. And are there places where young lawyers can come and now work out some of these horrible law school loans? Because to come over here, you're not making a lot of money if you're starting out here, I don't think. And so there's a big burden, a debt burden that young lawyers would have. We did see that there are a couple of opportunities and programs that can help, like doctors in the 60s and 70s in underserved areas, that maybe we could get a package together that might help them to say, if you're in public service, like in the Commonwealth Attorney Office, or the County Attorney in Northampton, that's been open for how long?
Since
About a
July.
year. Yeah, last July.
No.
Just
This year.
just came about. So there's they've been calling all over creation, I think, trying to find a county attorney. Another thing what I thought we might be able to do is to talk with some of our communities or maybe our economic development authorities. And because Judge Vincent and I were talking about just professionals of every kind, is maybe put together an office or a location where there's good internet service and maybe in the way of a shared space or something that individuals or firms could have a location here without the expense or burden of an office. And maybe we could.
Like we work for lawyers?
Yeah, something, like just a place you could go and you could work and you could be. And to do that, then you have an obligation to do a certain amount of pro bono work or at least be on a court-appointed list. Speaking of that, let me say, as far as the Indigent Defense Commission, I've had 2 or 3 lawyers that won't go through any more training. They said, I'll be on a list and I'll do stuff. I don't have any more time to do that. I don't have any more time. And I said, okay, well, I'm keeping you in my back pocket because there are times we just have to have someone, okay? But I have at least one that I know right off the top of my head who said, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not doing any more training. If you want me to do something, I'll do the best I can do. It's okay, we'll take you. I could count in my 4.5 years, probably on one hand in the criminal side, of folks who were not eligible for a court-appointed lawyer.
Say that again, please.
I could probably count on one hand in 4.5 years in my 2 counties, because I do the intake the information, income and so forth. Probably count on one hand those who are not eligible for a court-appointed attorney that the court would pay for. Probably on two hands those that waived. But there is a tremendous need. A lot of folks who are coming into practice and others, and they don't want to do court-appointed work because of the pay, $120. It is not enough. Most of the folks that we see in my court anyway, they are high-maintenance clients. They just are. And $120, I had an attorney tell me today that, if we will pay for tolls, for example, like I do expenses, and some courts do that, and some don't, but I'll pay that expense if we can get a court-appointed attorney who comes over and works on a case. It's just part of the expense of doing that, because 2 or 3 times if they come over here, that's the $120, and they haven't even, that's not even the time spent with the client. So, I'm looking at every possible thing that we might be able to do that would be helpful. And I've talked way too long, but we have a lot of needs, and if we could get a few of the retired attorneys to just do a tad pro bono work, or some of the larger firms in Hampton Roads to send, even if they could come send a younger staff attorney or something over a day or 2 a month, if we had a place for them to be, I think that might be another option. That's my 2 cents.
You did not speak too long.
Thank you.
Those are all important
Thank you.
issues.
Let me also clarify that when I said not criminal, that was the Access to Justice Commission. I overspoke.
The state bar is definitely interested in hearing that.
David, you said you wanted to speak. Oh, do we have another one?
Anthony.
Okay.
I'm definitely going to speak.
Okay, who would like to go before David? Before it's too late? Kevin?
Well, good evening to everybody. My name is Kevin Martingale. About 10 years ago, I was president of the State Bar. I'm an attorney based in Virginia Beach. We've got a little satellite up in Onancock. It's just a meeting space. And we did that because I have a little place on Deep Creek, and I like it up here. So we wanted to be able to get up here some. And several of the attorneys in my firm do come up here a fair amount. Because of all the bar work that I've done, I have figured out a number of the problems that we're facing in Virginia. They're not necessarily unique to Virginia, but frankly, we're making them worse. And I don't mean the we in this room. I mean, we as a bar just aren't doing a good job. And I'll give you some examples of the problems. Number one, too few people are taking the Virginia bar. Recently, I don't remember which class it was, came out of UVA Law where I went. 300 graduates came out and 13 took the Virginia bar. 13 out of 300 UVA law grads. That's not good, but I'll tell you why in a minute. We also have law school debt. It's different than it used to be. When I went to law school over 30 years ago, it didn't cost anything like it costs now. I went to UVA, which was then actually a public school. Well, for a variety of reasons, they decided to make themselves financially independent. It now costs approximately $72,000 a year, even if you live in Virginia.
Just the tuition.
Yes.
It's really, really expensive. And so if you're coming out of UVA law, if you had to take out a lot of loans, could you afford to go to any rural area? The answer is probably no. And I will tell you, because I've got a son who's a second year there now, there's a lot of big firm pressure. They're all competing to get in with the biggest firms. In fact, he was with one of the largest firms in the Hampton Roads area this past summer, and some of his friends were like, oh, well, you'll probably be the smartest lawyer there because, it's not a firm of 500 lawyers, which is, of course, ridiculous. But that's some of the mentality that is in some of the law schools. That's a problem. Next, a lot of the schools that are trying to serve the rural areas and are trying to deal with legal deserts like Appalachian, they're getting whipsawed by their accreditation agency, which is the ABA. So the American Bar Association is in charge of accrediting law schools. And what kinds of things do they look at? Well, two of the big ones are, what are your admission standards and what's your bar passage rate? Well, Appalachian has a 75% bar passage rate, which is strong. In fact, last time around, they weren't the lowest in Virginia. 75% is a really good number. There are schools in California and Florida that are well below 50%. Now, they're the problem. If you are saddling people with debt and they're coming out and they can't pass the bar, maybe you were letting in the wrong people, maybe you don't know how to teach. Maybe it's both. In fact, most of you probably can't name the school with the #1 bar passage rate in Florida. It's Florida International, because they decided many years ago they were going to be the bar passage school. You come in there, you're going to graduate maybe with some debt, but you're going to pass. It's over 90%, and Florida is a really hard bar. So there are schools that are not necessarily the hardest to get in who know how to help get you ready to pass that bar and become an actual attorney. But why is this a problem? Because Appalachian was getting picked on by the ABA about having standards that were too low to get in. And so they had to toughen those up, which made their class sizes come down. They're putting out fewer attorneys into the southwestern part of the state, and they're very tuition dependent for their finances. So they are having some financial struggles that they didn't have a few years ago. And it makes no sense. It's a self-inflicted problem where the ABA talks all the time about legal deserts and wanting to fix it, but they're doing things that are counterproductive, dealing with some of the schools like Appalachian that are there to solve that problem. So what are some of the solutions that I envision? Well, #1, the bar exam issue. We've gone across the country increasingly to the uniform bar exam. Virginia did it. And so my oldest son, who graduated from Florida State with a law degree and a master's, got a job working for the National Alcohol Beverage Control Association, headquartered in Northern Virginia. And they said, just be a member of any bar and you're good to go. So what did he do? He took DC. Why? Because it's a UBE jurisdiction. And he got a high enough score, so now he can immediately wave into something like 20 other states. Why would he take Virginia? It would make no sense. Our numbers have gone off a cliff. We've got a problem. Now, the state bar can't control the Virginia Board of Bar Examiners. And I keep hearing that they're going to do something about that. Well, they need to do something about it years ago. They can't fix that problem fast enough. Because when we don't have enough people taking the bar exam, you're not going to have the influx of young lawyers coming on the Eastern Shore or frankly anywhere else. The firms are struggling to find young talent because we don't have enough new people taking the bar. So we've got to fix that. So remember, Virginia Board of Bar Examiners, if you know anybody, start applying pressure. Because we're the people who are struggling to deal with this now. The judges, the lawyers, the community. We don't have enough people taking the Virginia bar. The law schools that are getting picked on. We need to get more active with the ABA, not less active. The Virginia State Bar started pulling back from its involvement with the ABA because there were concerns the ABA is very political on certain issues, which it is. The solution is just don't participate in the politics of the ABA, but do pay attention to stuff like how they deal with the law schools. How do they accredit them? How do they approve them? Which ones do they put on probation? We should have an interest in all of that. If the ABA is going to be in charge of accrediting the law schools, then we have to be involved with the ABA, at least on topics like that. And then finally, on debt. We ought to have some kind of programs like was mentioned earlier, we used to do with doctors. I was nearly born in Alaska because my father almost took a job in Fairbanks as a new doctor. I'm so glad he didn't. But he ended up finding a good enough job in Richmond where I ended up being born. But we need to have some of those rural programs. And I think UVA Law has been working on this and some others, but where they do things that forgive debt or delay repayments until you hit certain income levels. I mean, there are any number of creative ways to do this. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look at what some of the other states that have huge geographic areas, like state of Washington and some of the Midwestern states, where they've been dealing with some of these problems of legal deserts a long time. Let's communicate with them and figure out what are they doing. One of the things the ABA is doing pretty well is they're creating a big database of the ideas and looking at how people are solving it. I don't think they're doing a good job with some of the law school issues, but in terms of the incubator programs and things like that, they are doing a good job. So that's one way to try to deal with the debt issue. I mean, the young lawyers want to come out and they want to work on a place that's great like the Eastern Shore. They should be able to do that. But right now, so many feel that that's just mission impossible. They got to start repaying this massive debt, and there are only certain kinds of jobs that they can afford to take. So to summarize, we need more people to take the Virginia bar, and there's an easy fix there. We need to get on board with something that's the UBE or something like that. There's the next gen bar. There are a lot of discussions about what's coming, but we've got to get on board and do things that make it attractive to take the Virginia bar. We've got to work on the way that law schools are being dealt with so that schools like Appalachian continue to exist and thrive and hopefully get bigger. And we got to fix the debt problem. Happy to answer any questions you've got, but I want you to understand, I see the problem and I'm on your side on this. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, David, I don't see anybody else ready.
All right, thank you. So I am going to talk for myself, and then I have some prepared comments from my wife, who is my law partner, who could not be here today due to 7-year-old issues.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Dr. David Weber. I am both a lawyer and a PhD. My PhD is from the University of Florida, so I'm really sorry about your son having gone to a really crappy school.
Well, we also got LSU in our house, so
So sit down.
so go Tigers.
I mean, I'm not wearing shorts, so I don't have jean shorts on, so I don't have that. I have sports socks on, so it's almost the same. So I have a unique vantage point that I'm hoping I can share with you about myself, and then I'll talk about my wife. I am a professor and the program director of the Fraud and Forensic Accounting program at Salisbury University, the Purdue School of Business. And I'm mentioning that because Salisbury is the only 4-year comprehensive regional university on the Delmarva across all 3 states. In fact, Salisbury offers in-state tuition to people from these 2 counties here in Virginia, as well as in Delaware, because it's the only university out here. In addition, because I am both an accounting and lawyer, I have some unique vantage points into another esteemed profession, which is that of being a certified public accountant. I do want to share with everybody that it's not just the law interest that's declining, that we have seen across the accounting profession that there was a precipitous decline around the time of COVID in enrollment, that people don't want to become CPAs for, in some cases, the same reason they don't want to become lawyers, because it's hard. It truly is hard. So if you want to be a CPA, you don't just have to go to 4 years of school, but because you're not going to graduate school, you have to have 150 credit hours. So it's essentially a 5th year of school. You have to sit for a state licensing exam. The similarities are very, very similar between law and accounting. So I think that I'm qualified to talk about this. And students feel that there's an easier path, that they can make money. They can go to an investment bank. They can major in finance. They can do other things and not necessarily go to graduate school. Okay, so that's thing number one. Thing number two, I want to point out that as the only public regional comprehensive in this area, I personally have seen where the law schools are sometimes a detriment, an impediment to us growing the lawyers here. I can share with you, I too have a 2L who is my child. I mean, I have multiple children, but I have one who's a 2L, and he is in a Maryland state law school because none of the Virginia state law schools would admit him, even though his application was on Chincoteague Island. Okay, and so by way of example, I'm sorry, I didn't connect it all up. I'm stream of consciousness, but the judges already know that. In addition to being a professor, I'm allowed by Maryland law to practice a maximum of 8 hours a week. So I am allowed to practice too, but I can only practice that 8 hours. And I have a law firm, and my wife, my lovely wife, is my law partner, Julie Goodwin Weber, and Julie is the only full-time lawyer on Chincoteague. Okay, Isabel's from Chincoteague, but I don't think she has an office on Chincoteague. And I'm the 1/8 lawyer, or whatever, the 1/4 lawyer on Chincoteague. And Chincoteague, for those of you who don't know and who are listening online, is the northernmost community in Accomack County, but it's also, I think, the largest voting. I think it's the largest citizen. I think it's bigger than Cape Charles. And we're the only lawyers. And for the entire northern half of the county, of Accomack County, we're the only lawyers. 1.25 lawyers. And I can share with you that we receive approximately 15 to 20 new client calls a week that we turn away. Okay, per week. So from our perspective, there's no lack of work. Our child, who is in a Maryland State Law School, is coming and joining our firm. He will be practicing here. There is no shortage of work for him. He knows it, and he's coming back, and he's doing it. But with the law school, the fact that not a single Virginia school of repute was willing to admit him, and multiple public law schools in Maryland were, and recognized that there was a need for Eastern Shore service, I thought was really bizarre, okay? We have, I don't want to get into the politics of the situation, but we have sometimes a perception of diversity, equity, and inclusion that might be the color of skin or something else, but not necessarily about rural nature or income disparity or all the things that make Accomack and Northampton County and also the 9 counties of Maryland on the Eastern Shore completely underrepresented in both states. And I see it's a core mission of the law schools to educate people and put people out and allow them to come, and they're not. And even though I'm a taxpayer in Virginia and my primary residence is Chincoteague, I'm having to send my child out of state because he can't go to a state law school here. And I'm very disturbed by that. And there's a number of members of bar in here, and they have seen my child at bar meetings, and he has come to the luncheons, and yet he's having to be up in Baltimore because he can't be in the Commonwealth. And he will be sitting for the Virginia bar, whether he likes it or not. But he will do. But he is going to, because he knows that the work is here and he sees it. And I talk to him about it all the time. The type of work that we're seeing the most, we are seeing a lot of people calling about criminal matters. I am recused from criminal matters because I am a sometimes part-time assistant Commonwealth attorney in Accomack. So it says right on our website, we can't talk to you about criminal stuff. And yet the volume, 5 to 10 people a week, because they're unhappy with whoever has been appointed. They think that they're not getting responses back from appointed counsel. Going to what Jack said, that may be because they're not meeting their assigned counsel until the morning of the hearing. And some of these people are locked up. So they're sitting in the jail. They've never met their lawyer. Their lawyer is not responding to phone calls. I know why that is. It's because we're all overwhelmed. I mean, that's why the phone calls are not being responded to. And so I'd say about half of them are criminal matters. The other half, almost entirely, are estates and probate. Okay? We're seeing an incredible amount. Again, for those of you who are visiting us and who are not from out here, there are a lot of people who come here to retire. They fall in love with it. We have a national seashore. Our beach is controlled by the National Park Service. The interior of Chincoteague Wildlife Refuge is controlled by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In Northampton, we have many, many Fish and Wildlife Service areas as well. And people come here to retire, but they don't have the support network that they would have in a normal place. So some of these people that are calling us are not people who can't afford lawyers. They can afford a lawyer. They literally cannot find a lawyer to hire.
So let me interrupt with a question for a minute.
Sure.
You can breathe now.
I'm going to do some 0.25 yoga.
When we had our initial hearing in the Northern Neck, one of the things we heard was that many of the retirees brought their lawyers with them, that they kept using the lawyer from Fredericksburg, Richmond, Northern Virginia, whatever, and that they didn't use the local counsel.
That's not what we're seeing.
That is a difference here. So I just wanted to.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, entirely zero.
Interesting.
But a lot of people here are not moving from somewhere else in Virginia. So if you just pay attention driving back, look at the license plates. A lot of the license plates around here are New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and increasingly over the last 18 months, Massachusetts. So basically people are being, and again, I remember I'm coming from Chincoteague, so it's a little different than the rest of the county, but people are being priced out of Cape Cod. People are being priced out of Martha's Vineyard, and they're moving to another national seashore where they are well heeled. By our standards, they are wealthy. Okay, they're not wealthy by Martha's Vineyard standards, but by any means of standards here, These are top 2%, top 1% people, and they cannot find a lawyer.
I noticed that in the Exxon in Cambridge, actually.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Cambridge is another,
Yeah.
it's a perfect example of that,
Yeah.
where it is incredibly well-heeled people.
Thank you.
So on the estates and trust stuff, what we're seeing is they'll either have a trust set up, or they'll have their last will and testament and their estate plan, but it'll be a New Jersey plan or a New York plan. A lot of people want to retitle their home because here in Virginia, real property drops like a rock, and they've all learned from their own internet searches that simply by retitling, maybe they could avoid some of that. So even preparation of deeds. This is what we see. And so we turn people away, and basically it's based on our ability to do the work. And obviously most of that is my wife. So if I may, with your permission, I'd like to read what my wife wrote. My wife's name is Julie Goodwin Weber, and again, our principal law office is Chincoteague. We also have a satellite office in Berlin, Maryland, which is literally the county that shares a border with Accomack County. I feel an obligation to return almost every prospective client call, particularly estates and trusts, since I know if I don't, there's a good chance they will never, ever hear from any lawyer. These calls usually do not lead to client engagements, either because the client can't afford us, or it's not a good case for us, or we're too busy and we can't take on more matters. So I end up giving time that I can't bill or spend on other matters. Sometimes, even when I do not have time to take on a new matter, I end up doing so because of the nature of the case. An example would be the widow of a deceased spouse with no idea how to transfer assets or administer the estate. I believe it's our public duty as attorneys to help these individuals. I hear constantly every day from people that they've called 5 other lawyers and that you're the only one who's ever called me back. I've offered a lot of pro bono, low bono time. How do we get more lawyers to the shore? Julie, my wife, says she has no ideas right now. I'd like to share a couple ideas that I have. I am currently rolling off of a federal grant that I've been administering through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services with regards to fraud and financial crime investigation involving elders. And the hypothesis of our grant, which was based on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, was that if the United States government paid the tuition of our students to be in this program, that it would lead to increased interest in public service. And during the course of this grant, which we are now ending, it's been 3 years, our program increased by approximately 50%. So when students were having their full tuition or part tuition paid, they were much more willing to both consider majoring in forensic accounting, but also vastly more willing, because we're now tracking the outcomes, and there will be research papers coming out of this, they were much more willing to commit to public service afterwards because they had lower student debt. So just like ROTC, or just like the Indian Health Service in the past, where we might place physicians on Native American tribal lands, I think that we're at a point where if either the General Assembly or possibly the federal government was willing to fund the education of lawyers who contractually agreed to provide service in rural areas. It hasn't come up yet, I haven't heard it yet, but we're not just a rural area. These 2 counties, Northampton and Accomack, and the 9 counties of Maryland are all also medically underserved areas. That's really important to mention because it leads to negative outcomes for our clients. So again, if we're talking about elder protection, if we're talking about coming with a network of people, even if it's affluent people, they are moving here and they don't have a support network, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a physician. Jack mentioned dentists. We're also a dental underserved area. It's almost impossible on Chincoteague to get a dentist. There are no dentists. The only dentist is from Virginia Beach and comes to Chincoteague, a very infrequent amount of time. My wife, we live here. My wife has had to drive back to Montgomery County, Maryland, next to DC, just to have her dental work because we can't get into a dentist here. All of this medical underserviced stuff leads right into the practice of law. It means that people are not being supported. So my hypothesis that I call out for, and I'm certainly going to be active on the committee, is that I think we need to have a new paradigm where people are given some type of incentive to come here. They're contractually obligated to stay. Perhaps unlike the Indian Health Service or ROTC, perhaps we don't restrict what they do. So they could be on the assigned counsel list if they want, but they don't have to be. But simply their presence here will lead to a greater availability of lawyers to handle whatever the matters. I agree with Jack that I don't think the income here is as high. Like, I don't think you can't bill the same rate that you'd bill in Northern Virginia. But I am confident, based on the numbers we turn away, that my child, even if he's billing $100 an hour, he's going to be fine. And the other issue is, if we have these lawyers come here, we can have some form of supervision over them, meaning that there could be mentors that we assign who are more experienced lawyers. That is something that, for me, I would love doing and would probably be a better use of my time than individually trying to handle cases in my 8 hours. So anyway, I'm sorry about my stream of consciousness, but I wanted just to give a different perspective, because we're come here's. I mean, if it's not obvious by now, we're not from here, we're come here's. But I think that there's an opportunity here, but for the structure of law school costs, definitely law school admissions. I feel like these law schools are not paying attention to other equitable factors, such as coming from the Eastern Shore, where there should be a priority to admit people if they're either from the Eastern Shore or if they're planning to return to the Eastern Shore. And all of the 5 or 6 Virginia schools should be doing that, but they're not. And thanks for hearing me out.
While you're here, let me ask a quick question, and I almost want to open it for discussion. I mean, one of the areas in which the medical profession, I think, has made greater progress than lawyers have is dealing with paraprofessionals, empowering nurses, and so on and so forth. And I don't know to what extent there is a community of paralegals in Northampton and Accomack. I'm thinking you're going to say no.
I'm not aware of any. I mean, I'm not aware of any, but it's different. I've heard what you're referencing. I will share with you, Salisbury University, my employer, has probably one of the largest doctor nurse practitioner programs. I'm confident that's why it's here, because they need to have more DNPs and NPs because there are not physicians out here. But those people still have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing.
Right.
They've still sat for a state licensing exam. They've then gone back for more school, although not 3 years of school. So that's where the DNP is less. I'm concerned about the quality that paraprofessionals would have in the law practice if we didn't license them. That's my, again, the analogy I would give you, which some of you might be familiar with, is that up until recently, tax preparers did not have to be licensed.
Right.
And so you had all these Jackson Hewitts and H&R Blocks and whatever, and there was no licensing standards for them. And the Internal Revenue Service has recently imposed a licensing exam, and now they have to be certified enrolled agents. And that was because of how many people had inappropriate tax filings.
But they weren't being supervised. I mean, we all know that the lawyer in the office is responsible for whatever work.
Oh, so you're saying the paraprofessional would be still supervised by a lawyer?
I'm thinking, I mean,
it's one of several models that's, and it's an excellent question. Western states are experimenting in many ways with different, different licensing. The Alaska model is basically paralegals who are hired and trained by the legal aid program in Alaska, allowed to do a variety of practice forms and are still supervised by that program. It's been approved by the Alaska Supreme Court. Rebecca Sandifer, who is a sociologist who has built her career around evaluating the legal system, gave a presentation to the New York State Judicial Conference 2 weeks ago about her study of quality of service by these, quote, non-attorney programs. And she finds that they are generally very high and clients are very satisfied. So there are things, I think, in my view, that Virginia needs to explore in those directions. Now, the 2 areas that you brought up as being most lacking, criminal representation and probate are, well, criminal is probably less amenable to paralegal representation, but I don't know about probate.
well, I can tell you about probate because I had my will redone last year, and I can promise you that the attorney was present at the birth, but not have been at the gestation, that most of the work was done by his paralegal.
I just wanted to add to that, along that same line of thought, there's a similar drop in this area, just talking to the attorneys that have their own practice on getting that paralegal staff or that legal assistant
Same
staff,
problem.
where you can get people that have that. I think a lot of offices are just taking those people who have the ability to learn how to do the job, they don't have that actual training, and it's very hard to even find that person in this community.
The more you empower, I'm sorry, the more you empower the, like paralegals, and the more authority that gets, gets back to, if you're still gonna hold the attorney accountable for their actions, you need, I mean, that attorney's gonna be very hesitant to cut loose his paralegal to do whatever. I mean, I would, and the malpractice insurance, I'm sure would probably go higher as well. So.
On that issue, I'm not an attorney, I'm a lay member for the State Bar Disciplinary Committee, but I would say that, one, that makes me think of when I was up at the General Assembly in the early 90s, and the dental hygienists were coming to the General Assembly trying to get the rights to go into nursing homes and prisons and stuff and doing the active dentist. And the dentist, and they said, well, we're willing to take a test, whatever you want to do. And the dentist said, yeah, it's called dental school, try it. And as a disciplinary board member, I hear Karen Gould, who used to be the executive director of the State Bar, in my head saying, what is the mission of the State Bar? It's to protect the public. And if we open it up to that type of qualifier, I'm married to an attorney, I've produced almost 1.5 attorneys. I am not qualified to give anyone legal advice, and therefore do not. But I am fearful for what that would do to the public, because they would have the idea that this person's qualified. And on that note, I would say also with court-appointed attorneys, we hear a lot of complaints about court-appointed attorneys. And I would say that some of the most serious cases that I've heard have been court-appointed attorneys who are very young, who hang their shingle, try and make, get experience, try and make money. And they're overwhelmed, and they never return calls, they make poor decisions, they miss deadlines, they have clients go to jail when they shouldn't have. And then every time we have when we're discussing sentencing, if you will allow me to call it, I say, is there any way we can say, if we are suspending this person's license for 3 years, is there any way we can also put on there that they are not allowed to be on the court-appointed list anymore? And the answer is no. We don't have that ability, because it comes out of the Supreme Court. And if I have a mission, it's to try and get those attorneys who've been in trouble to not be on the court-appointed list, because I think Johnny Q. Public thinks, oh, this is a list of attorneys that have been recommended by the court. They must be highly recommended. This is a great list of people, and they don't know that these are, for the most part, some of these are very well-established attorneys who are giving back, but so many of them are young people who have no clue what they're doing and do not have mentors. So I would seriously put the brakes on the idea of putting paralegals in the charge and the position of an attorney.
Even if they're supervised.
I don't think they are typically.
Can I comment on this? It's related. When I was president-elect of the bar, I went out to Missoula for a presentation. This thing was put on by ALPS, which is the preferred malpractice carrier of the state bar. And they were very excited to talk about something the state of Washington was doing called the Limited License Legal Technician. Look it up, Google it, Washington LLLT program. Everybody's pumped up about this. It's gonna be the greatest thing ever. Well, in 2020, the Washington Supreme Court decided to sunset that program because it wasn't working for a lot of different reasons. And I think sometimes you can learn more from the failures of programs than the successes. Why didn't it work? if I'm not mistaken, it's a big state. I think they have one law school. They have huge geographic swaths of land with no lawyers. And they tried this for some limited purposes. These people would be like paralegals or like a physician's assistant, same kind of thing. And they would come in and do certain kinds of work, like helping with largely uncontested domestic relations cases and things like that. And the program ultimately failed. So I think we have to be careful looking for all these alternatives. And the last thing I'll say, by the way, is this: I'm so glad we're not like the medical profession, because we don't have non-competes and they do. And one of the reasons why there's a problem up here in the Eastern Shore is you've got Riverside and Centera that have all these competitive restrictions with regard to their medical providers. And it keeps people who want to come up here, for example, might be a Centera doctor who wants to work, Riverside says, no, you can't do that, or Centera says you can't. Thank God lawyers don't have the non-compete problem. We don't. But the medical profession ties itself in knots, and then we want to know why you can't get more rural services. That's one of the things. At least we get that right.
But if you're considering opening the door to the paralegal, why wouldn't you first consider opening the door to the attorneys in our border states who have been practicing, not necessarily for the allotted 5 years, but you've got lawyers up in Maryland who could come down.
I guess this is my time to exit.
I think.
I'm
The judge, when the judge comes up, but I did have one other thing I wanted to say about paralegals that I'll say after the judge is done. That prompted me, because we actually have had some ethics and disciplinary things in Eastern Shore that have dealt with conflicts of interest, where lawyers have gotten in trouble. And I had one case that went all the way up to the Virginia Supreme Court that I'll talk about in a minute without naming names. I'm not sure a paralegal would understand the fineries of conflicts. This is like a Peyton Place, small town kind of place.
Right.
And understanding the conflicts is really important so that you don't end up hearing both sides of the story or whatever. Again, I'll talk about it in a minute. I'm sorry, Judge.
Okay. Well, you're involved in a solution that's just come to mind, and that is Salisbury University should start a law school, and maybe you should be the dean.
It's Judge, it is legitimately, it is something that I have talked about with people, not necessarily as you.
Yeah.
Because it could be like, where did our former governor go to medical school? Eastern Shore Medical School, isn't that what it's
Eastern
called?
Virginia was in Norfolk.
Right, I mean, why can't there be one?
Yeah, but no, if Appalachian can start a law school, Salisbury, I'm actually kind of serious about that. It's a good university, a big enough university. They attract lots of lacrosse players from Baltimore and Montgomery County and everywhere. And they could attract people who want to go to law school. So just a thought. The other thing I wanted to say in response here is we have some lawyers who are too stretched out on our court-appointed list. But for the most part, we have very good lawyers on our court-appointed list who care about their people, who go see them, who get bond hearings very promptly.
We do.
The idea that people don't see their lawyer until the day of trial may be accurate in some minor traffic cases when they have talked on the phone. And I do have lawyers will say, is so-and-so here in the room? That's obvious to me that that's the first time they met them. But that occurs in minor traffic cases. As far as people locked up in jail, we do get a complaint from time to time from people in jail. Not often, but when we do, we immediately appoint somebody else. And I'm sensitive in who we appoint because I know who's too stretched out and I know who's local and we'll go see them. So I'm sure the worst cases do come to the bar. And yet there are, on this list, on the list that I brought in with the names, I'm confident in all of them to competently handle a case when they come to trial. And I'm confident in nearly all of them to attend to their clients reasonably promptly. The trouble comes with someone is locked up in jail and their lawyer is in a 3-day jury trial. That's going to happen in a small place. And we don't know often when the lawyers are just about to start a 3-day jury trial. But I just wanted to give a vote of good confidence to the court-appointed lawyers we have, and we just need some more.
Thank you. We have about 20 minutes left. Is there anybody who would like to speak who hasn't come forward yet?
I'm not gonna defend myself for being a drone, because I spent 70-some years getting to be a drone, and I'm happy about that.
Come on
I'm
down.
not there. But
Tell them about the esteemed agency you came from.
Tell us your name first.
my name is John Burtis, not to be confused with Judge Bird, who is my wife, and I'm a happily kept man. I will tell you that listen, I have been retired since February of 23, and hardly a week goes by that I don't get a call or an email or a message, and it's a detailed message. It's not just like, hey, I have a need, they leave all kinds of stuff on the phone. So, and it clearly says on my website, I'm retired. I don't answer the phone. I didn't answer the phone very much when I was practicing. I certainly don't answer it now. So there are people, and I think David's right. And David, and I share some background. I'm also a CPA, not licensed, but I passed the exam, and I'm a forensic examiner as he is. I did a lot of work in that realm too. So,
And most importantly, we both retired from the same federal agency.
control the currency. I was a treasury guy back in the day. So yeah. But anyway, there is a need here, but I think the one place there is some room, I'm not sure that addresses the needs of the real people that are harmed, is what David mentioned. I get a lot of calls, and I refer a lot of people who moved here who want estate lawyers. And there are people that come here and the spouse passes away and they need some help. There is a need for that. But that doesn't really speak to, I just want to reiterate, that is a deal and there is room for that, but that wouldn't necessarily, unless that person would take that as their main practice and then also do pro bono work or court-appointed work. That's so. Not ever having done any court-appointed work, I have nothing to add to that other than I brought Thornton into the world.
I trick him as hired.
Sometimes you hire people and you don't know what you're thinking about. That's when I hired.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just want to say something about how I have no solutions to the problem of not enough attorneys here. But I do have experience with the consequences of that regarding civil suits. I've been scammed more in Accomack County than I have been my whole life, and I cannot hold them accountable. So it has a very negative effect on the people who live here, because they know, the people who are doing the scam, they know we have probably no or very little recourse to get them in court.
Is there anyone else that has not been heard from and has something to say?
Can I make one more?
Please. Go ahead.
I'm going to take off my legal aid hat for a minute and put on my military spouse hat for a minute and get off a little bit on my soapbox on this. I think this is also something that we should look into. There is a military spouse rule to waive in. I am a military spouse, obviously. I have been fortunate in my 22 years of marriage to have remained in the state of Virginia, Commonwealth Virginia, but that is not normal. So I've been lucky. I see it from a legal aid standpoint. When military spouses have come in, there is a rule to waive in. It is very restrictive. They have to be supervised all the time. So from a legal aid standpoint, it was difficult to bring in an attorney that you always had to have another attorney go to court with. So I know there are discussions among the military spouse network. There is a huge network of military spouses that are attorneys in Virginia. And I think there are things that could change that rule with the right momentum that would open up a whole nother door. I mean, I'm on group chats with military spouses that are lawyers. They all want to work. They are looking for work. They struggle with being moving around and having a career on their own. And I think this is a way to help both.
Can I ask you a quick
Yes.
question about that? So is the barrier actually qualifying to get that certificate? Or is the barrier the limitations on what they're allowed to do, or is it both?
For those that I have talked to, I think the biggest barrier is limitations. Because I have talked to military spouses that have in previous states been public defenders and been equivalent of a Commonwealth attorney. And we had one in legal aid that came, fortunately she did a lot of things that didn't allow court, but the one time she went to court, we had to arrange for another attorney to go with her. And then it defeats the purpose, So it wasn't necessarily getting it. It was the restrictions on the
Practice.
practice.
Thank you, Tricia. Great comment. Okay. Not seeing anyone else, so I think we can thank everyone very much for showing up, sharing your experiences and your opinions. It's been extremely valuable. I thought we had a lot of good information and recommendations. So this will go in the record of our hearing as we continue around the state. And then our two committees will be looking over all this record very seriously as we consider what to do next, what to recommend to the bodies that we're responsible to. So,
I just also wanted to mention that I have physical copies of these. You're welcome to take them and share them with your colleagues, neighbors, friends. We definitely want as much input as we can get from everyone in the community. You're also welcome to take photos of this and share it electronically with people. So feel free to take a stack.
Okay,
And eat, drink, and be merry.
yes, yes. Please don't do this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ready for sharing this morning.